Sudanese Sufi Figures, Sheikh Farah al-Taktouk. The audience of our journey with the sage of Sudan, Sheikh Farah al-Taktouk, continues. A man who united wisdom and poetry, insight and reform. We met him today as an accomplished poet who devoted his poetic gift to the service of his community. For him, poetry was neither a mere verbal ornament nor an artistic exercise pursued for its own sake. Rather, it was an instrument of social reform and a means of addressing the concerns and challenges of his people through eloquent language and captivating rhythm. We have previously encountered him as a wise man who confronted the problems of his age through his memorable sayings and profound maxims. God bestowed upon him wisdom, and whoever is granted wisdom has indeed been granted abundant good. Today, we both at another station in his intellectual and literary legacy to listen to his poetic voice as it advises, guides, and inspires. So the audience, it gives me great pleasure to share with you one of his most celebrated poems, a composition whose verses have become deeply embedded in Sudanese popular memory. A famous poem which opens with the famous lines: ياواقفا عند أبواب السلاطين أرفق بنفسك من هم وتحزين. O you who stand at the gates of sultans, be gentle with yourself, lest you suffer an anxiety and sorrow. So the audience, as you listen, our encounter with the Sheikh Farah al-Taktouk renewed today. And here I would like to reflect on another angle of his personality. Would like to take him as a accomplished poet. And as I have started, I would like to share in this episode his outstanding, his wide fame ode, ياواقفا عند أبواب السلاطين. So just I would like to share the story of this poem, which at the very same time deserves to be told, and the historical context that reveals much about the circumstances of its composition and the intentions behind it. We shall first explore the story of the poem and the events that inspire it, before shedding light on its meanings, themes, and the educational, moral, and social values it conveys. Stay with us. So the audience, first of all, I would like to start with this introduction, which I have quoted from طيب محمد الطيب, his noted book, Sheikh Farah al-Taktouk, حلال المشبوك. So in his biographical account of Sheikh Farah, states that he was captivating and beloved by people's hearts a gifted poet whose words were pleasing and melodious. I'm inclined, this bit here to طيب محمد طيب, I am inclined to agree with this assessment, particularly when we consider the poetry of that period. It was an era characterized by imitation, adaptation, poetic elaboration, and the prominent influence of rhetorical ornamentation. Sheikh Farah, however, does not appear to have written poetry for the purposes of romantic expression, self-glorification, or poetry for its own sake. Rather, he employed poetry in the service of his community's educational, moral, and even economic needs, as we shall see. There is little doubt that Sheikh Farah possessed a deep understanding of his society, its conditions, and the ideas and concerns circulating among its people. Sheikh Farah seems to have recognized that his society possesses a natural inclination and emotional responsiveness toward rhythmic and versified speech more than toward any other form of expression. It is my belief, the speech is still for طيب محمد طيب. It is my belief that he approached poetry from this perspective. Moreover, despite the considerable span of time separating us from the age of Sheikh Farah, I am almost certain of the authenticity of the poems attributed to him and cited in his book. Some critics of Sufism frequently cite a verse attributed to Sheikh Farah والتكتوك as evidence for what they claim is the aversion of the people of the Sufi path to politics and to association with rulers. Otherwise, others invoke the same verse as a warning against seeking favor from those in power or becoming attached to worldly authority and influence. The verse has become so widely known that it is perhaps among the most famous lines attributed to the Sheikh, memorized and repeated by many people on different occasions. ياواقفا عند أبواب السلاطين أرفق بنفسك من هم وتحزين. O you who stand at the gates of sultans, be gentle with yourself, lest you suffer anxiety and sorrow. Yet, isolating this verse from its broader context can lead to a fragmented and incomplete understanding of the text. The verse was not composed as an independent statement, rather, it formed part of the complete poem consisting of 46 lines, encompassing educational, ethical, and spiritual themes that extend far beyond the simple warning against associating with rulers or engaging in public affairs. The Sudanese researcher, historian, طيب محمد الطيب recounted the story behind this poem and circumstances of its composition in his book الشيخ فرح والتكتوك حلال المشبوك. His account sheds light on the poem's intended meanings and helps prevent the selective use of isolated verses to support ideological or political positions that the poet himself may never have intended. Consequently, citing the single verse as proof of an absolute rejection of politics or dealings with political authority requires reconsideration in light of the complete poem, its historical and social context, and the well-known role of Sudanese Sufism, which extended beyond the spiritual instruction to encompass education and social reform and public guidance. So in this concern, the audience, I would like to share the speech quoting from Tayyib Muhammad al-Tayyib, mainly the philosophy and the purpose behind the composition of this noted poem attributed to Sheikh Farah. So the composition of this ode ياواقفا عند أبواب السلاطين, it has its own story. So I would like to share the story of this long ode. So the story of the compositions of the lines of the poems ياواقفا عند أبواب السلاطين goes like this. Bilal ibn Muhammad ibn Isa, the nephew of Sheikh Farah, was a close associate to Sultan Badi Awdigin. He persuaded the Sultan to allocate to Sheikh Farah a tract of land known as مشرع الحجيرات. And الحجيرات, as you follow, as I have presented in our earlier episode, it is a village which is located on the eastern bank of the Blue Nile near Sinnar Dam, where Sheikh Farah has established and founded. The Sultan agreed and issued the grant. However, the Sheikh distributed the land fairly among his disciples. Unfortunately, the speech is still to Muhammad Tayyib. I was unable to locate the document recording Sultan Badi Awdigin's gift. Through this act, the Sultan sought to draw the Sheikh Farah to his side for the support of a figure such as Sheikh Farah would have represented a major source of popular influence and public legitimacy. Sheikh Farah did not initially realize the Sultan's intention until his nephew Bilal wrote to him from Sinnar, while the Sheikh was then residing in the south of Sinnar. The substance of the letter and the essence of the letter was an invitation for the Sheikh and his disciples to come and reside with the Sultan, even in his palaces if they wish. Bilal then explained at the end of the letter how he had become one of the Sultan's close confidants and how he now stood on the threshold of wealth, prestige, and abundant worldly blessings. Sheikh Farah sensed that his nephew had placed him in an awkward position by effectively committing him to visit the ruler. He therefore wrote a reply which he later condensed into his famous poem beginning with the non-lines. يا ربي صل على المختار ياسين من كان صنعته قهر الملاعين. يا واقفا عند أبواب السلاطين أرفق بنفسك من هم وتحزين. So the audience, I would like to share this long poem with the intention that I have told the poem. In fact, it is not only one lines, which you always use and accustomed and familiar to listen whenever the speech on politics and Sufism arise. For people always stand as the first lines. يا واقفا عند أبواب السلاطين أرفق بنفسك من هم والتحزين. So here I would like to share. يا ربي. So Sheikh Farah started the poem by sending the blessing upon the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. يا رب صل على المختار ياسين من كان صنعته قهر الملاعين. Oh Lord, send your blessing upon the chosen one, Yasin, the one whose noble task was to subdue the forces of evil. يا رب صل على المختار ياسين من كان صنعته قهر الملاعين. يا واقفا عند أبواب السلاطين أرفق بنفسك من هم وتحزين. O you who stand at the gates of sultans and rulers, have mercy upon yourself and spirit, and anxiety and sorrow. تأتي بنفسك في ذل ومسكنة وكسر نفس وتخفيض وتهوين. You bring yourself into humiliation and abasement, breaking your spirit through self-degradation and belittlement. إذا كنت تطلب عزا لا فناء له فلا تقف عند أبواب السلاطين. If you seek an honor that never perishes, then don't stand at the doors of rulers. ولا تصاحب غنيا تستعز به وكن عفيفا وقدس حرمة الدين. Don't rely upon the companionship of the wealthy for dignity, but be self-restrained and uphold the sanctity of religion. فالطمع يرميك في ذل ومهلكة وما يزيدك إلا كل تهوين, and brings nothing but further disgrace. For greed casts a person into humiliation and ruin, and brings nothing but further disgrace. والقانع نام قريرا لا كصاحبه كما تنام قصون في البساتين. The contented man sleep peacefully, unlike the greedy one, like branches resting gently in flourishing gardens. فثق بربك لا تبقى سواه جاها والرزق منزلة في ختم ياسين. Place your trust in your Lord and seek status from none but him. والرزق منزلة في ختم ياسين. For sustenance has been decreed by God as a firm in Surah of Yasin. وكم جرى طامع في البيد مغترفا ولم يجد قصده في الشام والصين. How many an ambitious seeker has wandered the deserts in pursuit of gain, yet failed to attain his desire in the Levant or in China. كم دودة في عمق الأرض من حجر يأتي إليها رزقها في الوقت والحين. How many a worm lies deep beneath the earth and stone, yet its profession reaches it at the appointed time. ألا لازم العلم والتقوى وما نتجت من ثمار تفز بالحور العين. You shall gain the fruit that lead to paradise, to be victorious with the medians. خل الملوك بدنياهم وما جمعوا. Let the kings keep their worldly riches and all they have gathered. وقم بدينك من فرض ومسنون, and devote yourself to fulfilling the obligations and the involuntary deeds. واستغنى بالله عن دنيا الملوك كما استغنى الملوك بدنياهم عن الدين. Seek sufficiency through God from the world of kings, just as many rulers have been content with worldly gains, with worldly things instead of religion. واعلم بأن الذي ترجو شفاعته من البرية مسكين ابن مسكين. Know that the one whose favor or intercession you seek is but a poor creature, the son of a poor creature. لا يقدر العبد أن يعطيك خردلة إلا بإذن الذي أنشاك من طين. No servant can give you even a mustard seed except by the permission of the one who created you from clay. ما لي أذل لمخلوق وأسأله وإن سألت الذي أعطاه يعطيني. Why should I humble myself before a created being and ask of him when the one who granted him his blessings can grant them to me directly. الدين كنز عظيم لا فناء له والمال عارية والله يهديني. Religion is a magnificent treasure that never precious, while wealth is merely a temporary loan gain. May God guide me. من باع دنيا بدين واستغر بها كأنما باع فردوسا بسجين. Whoever sells religion for worldly gain and settles for it as though he exchanged paradise for a hellfire. فلومة من طعام البر تشبعني وجرعة من قليل المال ترويني. A simple morsel of whole wheat flour is enough to satisfy me, and a small drink of water is enough to quench my thirst. وقطعة من قليل الثوب تسترني إن مت تكفيني وإن عشت تكسيني. A modest piece of clothing is sufficient to cover me. If I die, it will suffice as my shroud. If I live, it will clothe me. والحمد لله قد تمت قصيدتنا ونشكر الله في سر وتعلين. Praise be to God. Our poem has now been completed and we thank him both privately and openly. فرح الفقير كثير الذنب ألفها منظومة لعبيد في البطاحين. فرح the poor servant burdened with many things compose it as a poem for the common folk from the بطاحين. So the audience, I shared this very long ode ياواقفا عند أبواب السلاطين composed by الشيخ فرح والتكتوك, the wise man of Sudan. So just here I would like to share the central ideas, the thematic meaning that Sheikh Farah intends to deliver to his audience. Spiritual independence. The poem, by the way, went to focus on the true honor which comes from God, not from rulers, wealth or social status. Furthermore, also we touch the critique of dependency on power. The poem and the poet And the poet mainly warns against seeking dignity through proximity of political authority. So this invitation that to be close to the authority, it is not something good. If you think on terms of personal gains, just to serve for personal gains, this is not something good. And the more here you would like to be close to the rulers in order to satisfy, in order to respond to your personal gains, this is bad habit. Sheikh Farah warned against this. Contentment, also in the lines that I have quoted or that I have shared, here the virtue of contentment, القناعة. For the inner peace belongs to the contented, whereas greed breeds an anxiety and humiliation. And furthermore, we would like also to experience with Sheikh Farah his speech on putting the trust in divine providence. For the sustenance is ultimately from God, not from kings or patrons. And furthermore, here we have the knowledge and piety. The path to success lies in learning, righteousness, and religious commitment. So, learning, knowledge, righteousness, and religious commitment, protective shields against going to satisfy personal gains. And the speech on the wealth, material possessions are temporary, has the poet here focused and pointed out. It is never goes on forever, temporary, while faith is an enduring treasure. And Sheikh Farah in the poem, by the way, called for abiding with the ethics. For the poem promotes moderation, simplicity, and freedom from attachment to worldly prestige, moral reform rather than political withdrawal. In its historical context, the poem is less a rejection of politics than a warning against sacrificing moral and spiritual integrity in pursuit of power and patronage. So Sheikh Farah, by the way, and I would like to conclude that he is not against the idea of standing before the gates of the rulers. And to him, this is something good if it is for the public service, not for personal, private needs or gains. And our justification for this speech is that the thematic ideas or the purpose behind the composition of the poem itself. For as we listen, the reason behind the composition of the poem is just to stand against the idea that his nephew Bilal has gone through. For Bilal has become one of the close associate to the king of Sinnar at that time during Sheikh Farah. And he has been provided with many lands, with many wealth, and became very wealthy person. So, because of his ties very close to Sheikh Farah, then he informed and pursued the king to grant Sheikh Farah lands on the Blue Nile, on the west and the eastern bank of the Blue Nile. So the king has given Sheikh Farah portion of land on the eastern bank of the Blue Nile. What has been done? Sheikh Farah has distributed these lands among his disciples and followers. And the intention of the king is to bring Sheikh Farah into his own side. For Sheikh Farah is so influential figure at that time. So if the king managed to take him into his side, this is great favor for him. But Sheikh Farah, ascetic, God-fearing, a man of social reform, never looked for his personal gains, stand against the idea, and because of this, he composed ياواقفا عند أبواب السلاطين أرفق بنفسك من هم وتحزيني. By this, dear audience, I came to the end of the episode till seeing you in another episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.